Chapter 14, Radio Communication Practice. Chapter for the test of the knowledge of the complete system of the amplifier with the amateur rate, with the record for the 12, with the laugh with the diagram, single with the A and band with the transmit with the amplitude module with the transmit with the frequency module, the transmitter function with the diagram, basic amateur radio. So this question how the chip with the module with the data show with the frequency with the uncool with along with the question with the property with the term with the test with the equipment, with the pertain with the communication with the receiver that also covered with the block diagram, single sideband transmit with the explain with the function with each of the stage, functional block with the diagram with the single sideband transmit with the show with the figure 14, one of the auto amplifier conventional with the design with the auto filtering with the not recover this because with the highly selective with the filtering, taking glass single sideband generated attention wave for the necessary with the frequency with the 300 hertz with the above 300 kilohertz. Those frequencies for all of the outside of the audio communication from spectrum of the voice signal is used only with the conveyance of the explanation input signal may be third intelligence signal that may overly cover any of the part frequency range of the 100 6,000 hertz. Upper limited with the input with the audio seal determined with the channel bandwidth with the upper cut off the frequency filter with the sideband generator with the lower end limited the input audio signal to determine the lower cutoff with the frequency on the filter signal sideband generator. Single sideband generator produces a single sideband with a signal in the intermediate the frequency with to produce a single sideband with a double sideband with a generator with a passive with a high frequency select with a filter with a reject with one with a sideband. Single sideband signal with a generator with a fake with the intermediate frequency we cover the high selective with the circuit with the required with the filter with the requirements filter method the single sideband signal with the generation may either read the crystal with the mechanical filter signal with a generator with a single sideband with a signal with a fix with the amp with the frequency with the path with the mixture with the amplifier with the with the transmitted radio frequency with the two-state with the conversion shown with the second conversion frequency multiple with the first conversion frequency with the frequency with the conversion required with the generator with the radio frequency with the producer some of the different frequency as well with a higher order mixing product with the inherent with the mixing circle with the have with the underside with the difference with the undesired some frequency along with the higher order with the mixing with the products attenuated with the inner state with the tune with the circle with the signals we cover the single sideband system without the plaque curated depends with the actually stable the frequency so the frequency stand with the stabilized master oscillator are extremely important with the standard frequency with the obtained with the crystal oscillator with the crystal house and since the stability with the crystal frequency depends on the stability with the oven, the temperature with the table, thermal control over the necessary with the thermal control over the oven is retained with the heat with the seven like a with the bridge and with the variation over the temperature corrected with the imbalance with the control bridge here with the generator provide with the IF circle with the carrier with the U with the produce the signal IF the single sideband with a single oscillator provide with the master oscillator with the necessary with the conversion of the frequency with the produce with the radio frequency single sideband with the frequency with the developed and the units derived from phase locked in with the single AM frequency with the stability stand frequency prevail with the single sideband system to with the fix with the IF with the conversion frequency with the obtain with the radio frequency and point with the design consideration optimum operation frequency various circle with the must be conserved with the as the control of the undesirable mixing products. The use of the harmonically related conversion frequencies must be permanent with the varying broadcasting frequency range of the converted into the 4 megahertz oscillator with a very practical range with the obtain with the high oscillator stability. The T300K kilohertz over the IF the optimal operating condition of filter with the required with the single sideband generator. Single sideband exciter output with the derived with the linear power with the amplifier produced with the high power RF radio frequency signal with the linear power amplifier where its single sideband transmitter become with the essential with the play with the output with the radio frequency with the replica with the grid input signal with the anomaly with the operation distortion power amplifier with the result of the intermodulation and the mixing with the between with the frequency with the input signal with the undesirable distortion within the desired channel with the withdrawal with the produce the intermodulate output of the adjacent channel with the draw. Block diagram amplitude module with the transmitter was transmitted with a brief explain with the operation amplitude modulator for the instantaneous amplitude with the radio frequency with the output signal with the varied for the proportional modulator signal with the modulator signal with the consider the menu with the frequency with the amplitude with the phase such as signal with a compromising speech. Block diagram and signal with the amplitude modulator radio telephone transmitter shown in figure 14 to the oscillator buffer power amplifier show with the same purpose the constant wave with the transmitter with the microphone with the convert to the audio with the sound with the input with the corresponding electrical energy modulator amplifier with the audio signal with the amplifier with the necessary with the fully with the modulator cover the output with the modulator. is applied with the power amplifier with the radio frequency carrier with the modulator with the signal with the combined with the power amplifier produced with the amplitude with the modulator radio frequency carrier output with the transmission absence modulating signal with the continue with the radio frequency with the radio with the antenna with the draw with black with the diagram frequency modulator with the transistor briefly explains its operation block diagram with the band with the band with the frequency modulation with the transmitter with the shown with the figure 14.3 oscillation produced with the crystal oscillator stage output of which with the phase fed with the phase shift with the network with the supply with the grid voltage of the modulator 2 with the phases over the output voltage of the modulator varies with the corns with the input with the signal with the microphone with the phase of the shift with the equivalent of the relative with the low with the deviation output signal of frequency modulator stage. The frequency with the output with the modulator shape of the quadrupole, the first modulator shape of the quadrupole with the second with the multiple stage multiplier shape with the double and the last multiplier with the core output with the drive of the power amplifier shape with the frequency consistent over the two beam powers of the parallel depending on the more power requirements. Draw a functional block diagram in a basic amateur radio station block diagram. Basic radio amateur basic amateur radio station showing figure 14.4. Virtual communication rules of the regulation require the means of the employee with the transmitter with modulated in excess of modulation capability, no case of the amateur amplitude modulation capable of the wave of the module with excess with 100% with addition with the license. Amateur stations will provide with the measurement emitted with the carrier frequency show with the cell with the making of the measurement regularly. Paragraphs 97.75 of the meaning of the basic amateur radio show consist with the receiver, the transmitter with the power supply and the antenna supply with the telegraph key with the end or microphone modulation monitor with the frequency meter with the later two items not required continuously when necessary with the frequency check with the operation safety. However, the frequency transmitted signal determined amateur radio with the not necessary with the exact with the operation frequency being known with the frequency with the inside with the limited with the hand several devices employed in trivially operating with the frequency include with the sideband with the within the limits if there is no tolerance for the edge of the band. The most common method is a frequency with determination and best frequency with the oscillator, otherwise known as the BFO, conjunction with the frequency meter frequency marker generator. The marker of the generator with the crystal control the circuit with the fundamental frequency of 100 kilohertz. There's some circuit that may also have the fundamental frequency of 50 kilohertz at even 25 kilohertz. The harmonic maker generator frequency used to locate with the edge of the band with the calibrated with the receiver to dial with the receiver to dial with the calibrated determined with the transistor frequency determined with the best frequency oscillator with the two other methods of the common practice with the use of the absorption frequency meter, dip meter with the absorption of the frequency with the meter calibrated with the inductive capacitor with the tune across the band with the under with the consideration. Either the U would indicate when the approximate frequency with the circuit check with the same with the frequency with the absorption matter when the device of the radio frequency energy must be present on the circuit the end of the tap with the dip me with the other hand with the provide with the own source of the radio frequency energy as tuned across the band with the under with the consideration proximity circuit the end of the test of the meter with the indicate with the approximate frequency of the chain with the reading principle of the operation wall with the absorption of the frequency meter with the dip meter with the energy with the transmit with the one circle with the two and with the bolsters with the resin with the transfer the energy the take of the major meter deflection the digital frequency meter with the variability although with the unnecessary with the amateur radio which measures the frequency display with the result of extreme accuracy. However, the percentage of the modulation when the test of the AM transmitted signal you with the methodology with the determinant of the percentage of the modulation of the AM system when the oscillate with the properly can coupled with the transmitter can normally through with the pickup low lock loop. Cathode ray tube with the minimum amount of the circuit with the actually performing the task the two with the display with the reserve with the CR2 with the cathode ray tube with the distraps with the pattern with the wave with the envelope pattern trapezoid pattern for the obtain with the coupling with the radio frequency voltage with the vertical deflection with the cathode ray tube audio voltage from the modulator with the horizontal deflection plate with the result of the pattern with the clearly defined triangular modulation 100% with the wave and pattern with the obtainment of the horizontal sweep frequency with the oscilloscope set lower with the modulation frequency with the modulated radio frequency voltage with the coupled with the vertical deflection plates. Where precautions are preserved in an input with a cathode ground grid amplifier with a certain factor for the making of the shape of the conservative radiation ground grid circuit with, for example, the often problem relation with the cathode found with the ground the edge of the radio frequency concerned with the problem mixed with the infrequently, even indirectly with the heated cathode with the edge of the power of the radio frequency choke with the maybe with the heater to leave with the cathode with the directly heated with the two common approaches. You to keep the radio frequency above the ground on one of the modes of the radio frequency choke with the method and both of the other employed with the input to tank circuit with the can be tuned with the proper frequency. Ground grid power stations normally exhibit the input with the impedance between the 25 and the 350 ohm of the input and the network must be designed to provide correct impedance match. Well, consideration must be given to the line and the amplifier adjustment to prevent the distortion. Think of the amplified modification applied with the shape of the demodulation envelope with the preserve with the linear and amplifier with the retrieve with the output with the replicate with the signal applied to the grid of the tube with the type of the liner with therefore with the amplitude module with the drive and signal with the remain with the above with the cutoff with the down peak with the end over the clipping would recover the part with the modulation envelope with the zero axis. It should be accomplished by setting the grid bias axis at slightly less than the cutoff with the radio frequency principal advantage of the tetrode over the triode and the radio frequency amplifier with the primary advantage of the fact affects the inner electrode capacity minimized with the result of the two ancillary features. Neutralization properly minimized through the input signal likely to feedback with the input through the tube the internal capacity. Tetroids can be used with a higher frequency with the triode with recover the tetrode with the inner electrode capacity negligible at great range. 1410 with the principal advantage with the tetra with the compared with the tetra with the ability with the radio receiver the elimination of the need with the neutralization most important with the character with the tetra with the receiver the circuit with the ten with the oscillator with the pickup with the generated feedback with the curve with the output signal with the coupled back with the grid in favor with the input signal with the same coupling cause with the squeals over the whistle with the disrupt with the desired signal. Draw a signal a simple system on the neutral with the grid plate with the capacitor signal electron tube with the amplified employed with the radio frequency amplifier. The Class C amplifier painting picture from the figure 14.5 with the neutralizing capacity with the connect with the bottom end of the tank hole with the grid with the capacitor adjustable with the mount with the feedback with the can be varied accordance. Individual will come with the variable with the tube with the capacitor shown within the broken line with the representative with the inter electrode with the capacitor with the tube feedback with the capacitor with the C and to the end, or just as the point of the inner electrical capacity of the precisely concealed with the neutralized capacity could not be connected with the other side of the tank with the coil because of the cancellation inner electrode with the capacity with the dependent with the feedback with the signal at 180 degrees out with the phase with the signal existing on the grid, there will be no such with the phase with the reversal with the capacity with the connect with the to this point with the one tone. Why must some of the radio frequency of these amplifiers be neutral with the neutralizing flow with some of the radio frequency aim at the avoid oscillation inter-electric capacity? So for the typically encountered with the trial with the vacuum tube with the result of the positivity with the signal with the neutralize with the also with the capacity with the feedback pass with the two-tone test with the radio amplifier with the two-tone with the tap master with the check with the operation with the amplifier with the U with the conjunction with the oscillator with the two-tone with the pair with the radio frequency with the equal amplitude with the 1,000 cycles apart the center through the amplifier with the result of the waveform and the pair with the two-sun wave flow down the over the amplifier is operating properly. Whereas the method commonly used with the type of the linearity of an amplifier. Common method to check with the linearity of the linear amplification connect with the oscillator with the output with the apply with the signal to the amplifier input with the variable with the maximum allowed with the input to output waveform shown with the peer with the oscillator with the chip make with the input waveform shape with the end given an input level how the distortion test made with the linear amplifier with the test setup amplifier distortion set with the same use with the linear check with the scope with the connect with the output with the signal with the other signal applied to the input. How's the oscillator? Give the oscillator with the design and give the test instrument and the capable visual display with the result of the number of the test with the electronically excited with the screen among the oscillator with the many with the practical with the application with the fine with the line with the radio receiving transmitting with equipment hum measurement of the frequency with the comparison of the waveform observation percentage modulation many of it is similar application of the block diagram simple oscillation shown figure 14.6. Voltage waveform and examined was applied with a directly vertical deflection and placed with the cathode ray tube. The most common height with the voltage percent with either the two is small with the two large with the amplitude examined the most of the amplified amplified actuation and input with the vertical deflection and accomplished with the vertical deflection amplified circuit. Voltage applied with the vertical deflection plate without with the voltage applied with the horizontal deflection parts with the plate for the authentic vertical line will appear with the face of the scope. Proof of the horizontal deflection of amplifiers is stable with the side with the amplitude sweep voltage with the apply with the horizontal deflection, cathode tube sweep voltage with control of the beam with the deflection with the cathode tube with the input with the horizontal with the amplifier may be selected with the sweep oscillator in figure 14.6 with the sum of the external forces. If the screen with the cathode ray tube with the vertical signal with the amplified with the horizontal line with the present with the phase with the cathode ray tube with the length of the horizontal line depending on the amplitude. Sweep voltage applied with the horizontal deflection plate with the amplitude. Sweep voltage applied with the horizontal deflection plate with the control of the horizontal gain control. How much a generator is achieve with the mark generator achieve with the conjunction with a sweep of the generator with a sweep gen with a sweep of the cuff with the frequency spectrum, one limited to another circuit the output with the monitor with the oscilloscope with the mark with the generator with the image with the single small single with the preset with the frequency with the reserve with the scope of the sweep generators, remove the generators built with the capable with the accurately calibration of the marks indicate with the frequency of the air points over the response with the output with the superimpose with the marker signal on with the curve, viewed on the scope of the marker of the generator and pull in the sweep generator with a separate marker generator can be used with a parallel with it. However, the calibrated receiver, the calibrated receiver, the range with the secondary frequency stand with the built in the receiver with lower power with the fixed frequency with the crystal control with the oscillator used at 100 kilohertz with the harmonic area RU with the calibrated with the receiver the operating frequency with the secondary with the frequency and stand with the calibrated with the single with the WWV. Explain the use of the reflectometer with the use the amateur of the SWWR bridge of the refers to the reflectometer, with strictly speaking, when the reflectometer device used measure the time required for the pulse to travel the point return with the amplitude of the radio luminous transmission line voltage going to over the intimate is called the forward incident voltage over the well with the returning voltage called the reflected. And it's possible to bridge the encircle with the separate with the two components of each of the measure of the circle of the frequency called the reflectometer. With the cross-modulation receiver, the system with cross-modulation determined you with the defined with the condition of the encountered with the unwanted signal modulated with the desired signal with the condition arrived with the unwanted strong with the signal with the amplifier with the radio frequency amplifier with the receiver the tune with the another frequency. Explain sensitivity, selectivity of the receiver that well with the important quantity with the typical units with the expressly with the sensitivity of the receiver the signal with the response with the capability with the more sensitive the receiver the better receiver the hearer with the main very weak signal with the some of the sensitive compromise with the noise of the receiver along with the signals A receiver their sensitivity with the usually compared to the figure expressed with the receiver the normally immunity sensitivity normally expressed with the microvolts with the noise immediately expressed with the decibels good with the communication type of the amplitude modulated receiver that might have the sensitivity 0.5 with the wave of V ratio single plus with a noise of decibel of 10. Selectivity of the receiver, selectivity figure with the expression of the describe of the vulnerability inference with the signal with the other with the desired frequency non-select with the receiver the winner with the generative of the type that may have the extremely good sensitive with the value, but this with little help of the receiver that not capable of the projecting signal and machine with the frequency adjacent with the frequency with the interest. Same technique with the receiver the relatively insensitive could prove that far more useful with the sense of the receiver if the marks appear with a selective figure, particularly when you with an area with the incoming signal expressly, especially strong when closely with the space of the frequency selected and often exposed to the hertz of the kilohertz with the numerical value with itself that refers to the band pass with the free retro receiver from the single low point, half power with a point with the upper lower half point power point. Explain the descentation of the receiver, the descentation curve of the receiver, the strong and unwild, the signal and present of the intimate, if it differs with the cross modulation of the need of the desired signal, the north of the unwanted signal can be heard with the presence of the strong signal and reduce the sensitivity to receiver the desired signal. The addition frequency observed with the repeat of the location of the transmit of the receiver, the operating simultaneous with the close proximity. Alright, why do the vacuum tubes produce with the random noise, with the noise produced with the high gain with the audio amplifier state with the attribute of the high temperature electron boil off with the electrons free with themselves with the strength with the cathode with the friction with the cathode source with the minute with the broad spectrum and the thermal noise, which can be amplified generated along with the auto signal and another cause with the shot with the effect with the tandem of the variation of the quantity with the velocity with the emitted vary electron conditions in here with the thermotic tube with the overcome of the amplifiers employed with the negative with the feedback with the reduce the amplifier gain with the use of the number with the amplifier stage tends to keep the single noise ratio with the high and enough to see with the random noise without objection. Or discover the cause of the prevention interference with the radio activity and so with the motor vehicles, although most of the score for the interference with the pulsing with the nature, which make up with equivalent amplitude modulation component frequency modulation from receiver with respect with the noise of the mobile interference systems, making breaking electronic contact with the ignition system, the high frequency with the contact with the generator, brush with electronic wine, electronic transit with the generator, and all the type of the system, all with electronic motors, stuff with the windshield wiper, the electronic fuel pumps, air conditioning with the car heat with the many over the source of the producer get such spark gap type of the signal with the radio with the device with themselves will also produce the transient that may propagate through the wiring over the vehicle, eliminating with the interference source of the matter with the shielding with the better with the effect of the grounds incorporating filter type of the indicated lines with the supply power with the interference source, and with the receiver the improver can offer the node after the carefully install the bypass capacitor for the strategic location. 425. Which one of the following frequency discrimination circuits are used in EFM's frequency modulators or seeker circuit? Chapter 15, Operating Procedure, and we're on page 303.